Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. I'm going to explain the second item for the short-term decision making, that is make or buy. So management often have to decide whether to buy from the outside supplier or to make that product internally. So when you have to make that decision, two things that need to be considered. The first one is the marginal cost, and you need to compare that with the outside supplier's price. Okay, when manufacturing the component, this places existing production, the loss of contribution, okay, so the loss of contribution must be added to the marginal cost of production of the component before you can compare it with the buying price. So there could be some reasons why you want to buy from outside supplier. Maybe because there is an urgent orders from the customers, or maybe you have a production bottleneck. What is meant by production bottleneck? If you look here in a bottle, okay, you have this is a bottle, and you see what about the neck? Okay, the bottleneck means you have some congestion here, so the water cannot flow easily. So production bottlenecks refers to a congestion that you have in the production system whereby your production cannot flow smoothly. Okay, so maybe because of the machine breakdown that you have, maybe because of the networking errors and so on. Okay, why also you want to buy from outside supplier could be because of the limiting factor of production that you have, or maybe some other reasons. Or why don't you buy from outside supplier? So maybe because you fear that the supplier may not be able to meet the delivery date, or maybe you are unwilling to have idle capital, or you want to maintain control over your operation, so you don't want to buy from outside supplier. Okay, could be, okay, factors that you can consider if you want to make. So if you want to make, do you have the expertise, or do you have the technical knowledge to produce the product? Do you have does the product require special resources, for example any special material, machine hour, or special labor, or that you need to make that product? So the quality of the product, the component to be manufactured. So can the product be manufactured and delivered on time? So are you able to produce the quantity required by the customers? So these are the factors that you need to consider before you make the product. If you want to buy, what about the quality of the product supply? Can the product be delivered by the supplier on time? What about the brand name used by the supplier? Will the price offered by the supplier change in the future? And there are other questions or the other factors besides I mentioned here that you need to consider before you make that decision. These are known as some of the qualitative factors. Okay, if you look at the price, the ringgit and cent, okay, all the numerical figures, then you are looking at the quantitative factors. Okay, let's look at example 1. Okay, example 1, a firm manufactures a component XYZ 100, and the cost for the current production level of 50,000 units are as follows. So to produce XYZ 100, you need materials. The cost of material per unit is 2 ringgit and 50 cent. It requires labor. The cost of labor is 1 ringgit and 25 cent. There is a variable overhead of 1.75 and fixed overhead of 3 ringgit and 50 cent. If you total all this up, you will get a total cost of 9 ringgit per unit. Okay, so this is your total cost, and component XYZ 100 could be bought in for 7 ringgit and 75 cent. And if so, the production capacity utilized at present will be unused. Okay, means if you bought the price, or the buying in price is 7 ringgit and 75. So if you purchase it, then of course the production capacity won't be utilized. Okay, assuming that there are no overriding technical considerations, the question is, should XYZ 100 be bought, or should it be manufactured? So if you are comparing here, the cost of buying is 7 ringgit and 75 cent. If you consider here the cost of making is 9 ringgit. Logically, if you just comparing 9 ringgit and 7 ringgit and 75, when you talk about the cost, of course, you would choose the lowest. So comparing 9 and 7.75, of course, you say that 7.75 is lower. So I want to buy this component. Right? Is that the correct decision? Okay, look here. Okay, if you want to uh, buy, then of course the buying in price is 7.75 ringgit. But if you want to make, okay, if you want to make the product, you need to consider the material cost, you need to consider the labor cost, as well as the variable overhead. What about the fixed overhead? As we mentioned just now about the relevant and irrelevant cost. Okay, think again about the relevant and irrelevant cost. So fixed overhead is an irrelevant cost. Why? Because that fixed cost you still have to incur whether you continue with the production or you discontinue with the production. So in that case, your fixed overhead is irrelevant for your decision making. Remember, when you want to make decision, you just need to take all the relevant costs. Okay, if that cost does not differ between your alternatives, when if you purchase, you still have to incur fixed cost. If you buy, you still have to incur that fixed cost. So in that case, your fixed cost is irrelevant. If it is irrelevant, then don't include that in your calculation. So in this case, when you want to make that decision, you just take the cost of your material, the cost of your labor, and the cost of your overhead. So that will give you a total variable cost of 5 ringgit and 50 cent. So what's your decision now? So you compare 5 ringgit and 50 cent if you make, and if you buy, it is 7 ringgit and 75 cent. So therefore, it is better for you to make the product. Okay, with that, I